Matthew Holt here with another THCB Spotlight. Thrilled to be on with Stacie Ruth and Nirinjan Yee. And I'll tell you why these two female powerhouse CEOs are on together. But first off, let me introduce them. Stacie Ruth is the CEO of AireHealth, spelled with an E, A-I-R-E, Health. And Nirinjan Yee is the CEO of Breath Research. Okay, so real quick, welcome to both of you. Stacie, what does AireHealth do?
All right, so AireHealth, before we talk about what we're going to be
doing. We're not going to talk about what we're going to do, we're going to talk about what you do now.
Yeah, what we do now is we are a digital health company. We have a connected nebulizer product and companion applications, and we are moving our way into more of a platform play.
Okay, and so for those people who are dumb and ignorant like me, what does a nebulizer actually do? It's a way of taking drugs without, no, you tell me.
Okay, yeah, well, you were starting off well. So a nebulizer actually delivers prescription medication to the lung. It is a class 2 medical device. It has to be cleared by the FDA, which we have, of course. And it's a little bit different than the way you would inhale with an inhaler, or even more of a retail type product that is known as an atomizer. So a nebulizer puts that medicine right to the outer reaches of your lung.
And what kind of drugs and what kind of patients use this, and what kind of locations? And then why does it need a platform?
Yes, so the drugs come in a couple of categories, most of which are vasodilators. So they're meant to reduce inflammation in the lung. And most patients are either asthmatic, or you could have COPD, or you could have residual effects from a virus, such as what's happening with COVID-19. It could be that you're very susceptible to pneumonia. So these folks need constant, tender, loving care to their lungs, and this type of device is the correct one to use to be able to treat their inflammation effectively.
And is this usually something that's done by a nurse in the facility? Is it people doing it to themselves at home? Is it caregivers doing it? Who's the standard user of a nebulizer, especially one you sell?
Yeah, so nebulizers have been used for about 30 years. Most people will receive what they call a breathing treatment, and that's done in a doctor's office. Products have been available in the home for a very long time, especially for chronic users of a nebulizer or nebulized drugs. But our device is very small, about the size of a deck of cards. So these smaller machines are now portable, and you can use them on the go. They're battery powered. So it's a very different paradigm for these folks. They don't have to be sitting in their living room watching TV.
Right. So you're now, and how long does it roughly take to take the drug through a nebulizer?
Takes about 7 minutes with our device, which is one of the fastest on the market. And we have the capability of double dosing. So you're capable of putting 2 normal 3 ml doses into the machine.
Very good. Now, you mentioned a platform before we talked to Nirinjan about Breath Research does. What do I, and we'll hint at this, but what is the current sort of technology app service that goes along with you, or you mentioned it's connected, that goes along with it? And I assume most of these weren't connected, and you're probably one of the first to be like that.
That's correct. So most in the market, there are a few that are FDA cleared and they're not connected. And we will be one of the first in the market with a connected nebulizer, or even connected respiratory care, if you will, with these devices. So yeah, it's a bit new. The application itself is released for Android and iOS, and it is meant to be a companion tracker. So the first market we went after were children. So the design of the first application that AireHealth launched was very focused on the caregiver to someone who has asthma. So very specifically designed for that person to be able to take care of a child. But the idea is to track medication, to track usage, to see how the patient is responding to utilizing their nebulizer, and then give them feedback about atmospheric, air quality, things that have to do with the quality of air in their breathing.
I see. Well, that's a hint as to what's going on. So Nirinjan, you've been running Breath Research for several years now. Full disclosure, we've done a little bit of work together on this. Tell the audience, what does Breath Research do other than research breathing, which is pretty obvious?
So at Breath Research, we've developed a spirometer that simultaneously does lung sound analysis and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so that gives us the capabilities to do early detection, to be able to detect asthma and COPD severity. And it also gives us the ability to detect other diseases such as COVID-19, respiratory flu virus. And the reason why we developed this is because respiratory disease attacks and exacerbations can kind of develop in the dark. We know a lot about exacerbations and hospitalizations that can happen to respiratory patients, but there's this period where the patient is stable and then all of a sudden they're not stable. So we developed our technology to be able to inform patients and also clinicians with real-time lung health data, basically, so that we could get earlier diagnosis, earlier treatment, and save that patient a trip to the emergency room.
So you started clearly in the area of lung acoustics and, telling whether a pop or a crackle or something in the lung sound meant one thing or another. And you've integrated that now into a spirometer, which, what else do I learn from the spirometer? I learn how the lung capacity or the breath capacity. What's the important sort of predictive part of figuring out if we're going to have a COPD exacerbation or an asthma exacerbation?
Well, basically what we're detecting lung flow volumes, how much air you can push out of your lungs, how much air you can breathe into your lungs. And so that can be a prediction of shortness of breath. But it's really interesting in both asthma and COPD patients that spirometry can sometimes stay stable even while the patient is declining. And that's where the lung sounds come in, like wheeze and crackles and coughs and things like that. These are also other indicators that make the detection a lot more robust.
And then how do you actually record the lung sounds? I mean, I know there was way back when you had an iPhone app and tried to do it for the microphone, but what's turned out to be the best way of doing that?
Yeah, we originally started recording off mobile phones, but what we found is a couple of things, that you can use your mouth to make sounds, and so we're not getting the airflow and the lung sounds from your lungs, we're getting them from your mouth. And then the other thing is the position of the phone. So if you're holding it here or here, or some people would want to put it on a desk, think that we could record it from there. So that's why we created a device, so that we can have, really the same distance from your mouth and a really good recording.
So that's in the spirometer. Fantastic. All right, Stacie. So this week, late last week, you guys announced that these two organizations are merging. You're both relatively small, but Stacie, give me a kind of state of play of number of people, what you raised before and after, and where the new AireHealth or AireHealth powered by research, whatever you're going to call it. Give me the state of play of kind of before the merger and after the merger, because I know it's happened pretty quickly. You guys only met relatively recently.
Yes. So this was record time even for a startup. So we met at the end of March, and we worked through a couple of scenarios and iterations around how we wanted to combine our efforts, and landed on a merger agreement, which was fully consented. It was a wonderful gift that we were given. We are, both of us had raised money. Mostly Nirinjan had bootstrapped, and kudos for that. That is definitely a hard charge. We've raised a couple of $1 million, and even since the announcement, some more money has been coming in to people that had been looking at us for a little while. So that's happening very quickly. We still have about $1.5 million to go in our seed round, and we are planning an A round for early next year. And the capabilities that we have already on the table and the milestones that we look to achieve in 2020 do include bringing together the breath research, I'm going to call them assets or products, right, ahead of commercialization, and our already commercialized products bringing those together in a very robust minimum viable product that will hit the market sometime in October. We're going to call it Vital Breath, and it's basically going to be our first iteration of bringing together a platform plus devices, and now we get to say devices in plural. And the way that we'll face our customers is with some very patient-centric companion applications. So we're on our way there for October. That's what's happening next. We do need more cash to come in order to extend that runway a bit after the merger, and really looking to hit some strong milestones in order to secure an A round next year.
Okay, and how many people are you now with Nirinjan and her team?
We're 14 now,
Oh,
14 people.
Big people, I like it. And then let's assume that, this all goes forward and it all works, and that we are now starting to get a much more accurate reflection both in drug delivery, but also understanding what's going on in the respiratory frame. I mean, if we're not focused on respiratory around now, when the hell are we ever going to be, essentially? But we know that the issue of asthma and COPD, as well as infectious disease, is going to continue for a long time. So what else do you need? We know there are connected inhalers. The folks at Propeller have got that, and others. What do you think you need to have in your panoply of portfolio of offerings? And then how do you distribute this? Who is the intermediate customer that's in order to get to the end customer, the end user?
Yes, what we really need is some real world evidence in order for us to be able to identify how are your lungs today versus how were they yesterday, right? Is your therapy working before and after? And being able to communicate that between the person themselves, creating a more proactive lung patient, and also their caregivers and clinicians, okay? So in order to reach that type of equation, we are going to need to probably first start with a payer community and or a reseller community that will help us get our brand into the hands of large populations of patients. We do understand that some of that will be ahead of and in collaboration with creating evidence. And then once we believe that we've got the right level of evidence, we will go in for our next round of regulatory approvals. So we're very experienced at AireHealth around regulatory approvals. We have a gentleman who's worked decades in this space on our team. So as we move toward that regulatory, the competitive advantages will be around the fact that we're not only very strongly IP backed, but will also be regulatory cleared to be able to show people the before and after of their treatment and how their lungs are doing on a daily basis.
And what are are there other products that you're looking at? Obviously, you've got the nebulizer, you can have the spirometer connected with the acoustic sort of diagnostic part. Are there other products that you're going to be putting on the drawing board for future development?
Yes, so you'll get a little bit of a tell here. So we also have licensed a technology that will allow us to bring virtual vital signs into the same companion applications. So a camera-based vital sign technology will be implemented in the same time frame. And what that will allow us to do is triangulate several vital signs, including stress. So one of the pieces that Nirinjan didn't mention yet, but she could probably talk more about, is the fact that her breath research algorithms were very good at detecting stress and then utilizing different breathing patterns and different ways of engaging with your own breath in order to settle that stress. And a lot of times if you're asthmatic or other things and you start to have an asthma attack, that is combined with you having a little touch of anxiety that's coming with it. And being able to set, more than a little touch, having that anxiety be able to settle and have that be part of the same way that you're engaging as a patient is very powerful.
Actually, Nirinjan, can you make a comment about how much that expands and how much it's acoustic? There are people now who are also taking, there's companies who are focusing on taking information from the timbre of people's voice and other sounds like that, which relate to mental health. I think about this, I just did a piece on mental health, but I mean, is that something that you think you might head towards, or are you going to stay pretty much more in the what do you get out of lung sounds in terms of the research you'll continue to do?
Yeah, well, our platform also has breathing sounds like the sound of inhalation and the sound of exhalation, in addition to the pathology sounds of wheeze and crackles and coughs. And those breathing sounds are really important too. And that's what, in fact, you know, I demoed that a lot at Health 2.0 for a couple of years.
I remember.
And so it just gives you this real-time feedback so that you can see like what's going on with my breathing. And we have some different analytics that we can show you around that, like your respiratory rate and depth, inhalation, exhalation ratio. And then we can help train you to breathe in a way that is more optimal for who you are and how your lungs are. And so what you're bringing up about the detecting pathology from the voice, like over the phone, there are a couple of companies that are doing that. I think that's a really, really interesting space. But there's, you know, it can probably tell when the patient is further along in an exacerbation, because when you're talking, if you're all of a sudden talking like this, right, it's a way that the doctor or clinician or whoever, they can tell, this patient's getting short of breath. And I think that the analytics that we have are much greater because we're focusing all that acoustic analytics on your breathing. We have like 35 biomarkers on a couple of breaths. And from that, we can just tell a whole lot more.
That's really quite amazing. What you're telling me is that we're about to undergo kind of a revolution in how we think about respiratory diseases and, you know, lung and breath health. And given, you know, we're in a situation with hundreds of thousands of people dying due to respiratory conditions and lung diseases, and an unknown number of people are going to have ramifications from getting COVID, but also obviously asthma is a very prevalent disease, and COPD is a very expensive and very deadly and a very, very serious chronic disease, often deadly chronic disease. You're building a new company together right in that sweet spot, which is just very exciting. So good luck with this. I've been talking with Stacie Ruth, the CEO of AireHealth. Nirinjan Yee, the, I guess, former CEO of Breath Research, and now, what are you, the chief scientist? You have a title at...
I'm the head of innovation.
Head of innovation. Aren't you all innovation all the time out there? Nirinjan Yee, now joining forces with Stacie at AireHealth, formerly Breath Research. Very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys do, and good luck with the next steps in the journey, and hopefully you're building a little respiratory device intelligence giant here.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you.